Hello Owls! After seeing your fantastic dens today for our reading, I decided that I kind of wanted to make one too. So this is my reading den, and I've got some little Christmas lights and some nice cushions, and I thought that I'd read you one chapter of one of my favourite books by Roald Dahl, who is an author that you probably have either watched films based on books by or read the books as well. I know we read The Enormous Crocodile and The Twits, and I think we read George's Marvellous Medicine as well, so we've read quite a few Roald Dahls. We're going to read another one next term, which is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But for now, I'd like to read you a bit of Matilda. Now, this is a very old book, and it belonged to me when I was little, so I'm going to find the page. I'm not starting at the beginning, so I'm going to read you one chapter that's not in the movie, because I thought it would add a bit more to your impression of the whole story. If you don't know Matilda, she's a little girl who has two parents who are horrible to her. They ignore her, they're mean to her, and she's a very bright young person who loves to read and learn things and explore, and she's also quite strong-minded, which means that she has very clear views and opinions. So this chapter is called The Ghost. There was comparative calm in the Wormwood household for about a week after the superglue episode. The experience had clearly chastened Mr. Wormwood, and he seemed temporarily to have lost his taste for boasting and bullying. Then suddenly he struck again. Perhaps he'd had a bad day at the garage, or not sold enough crummy second-hand cars. There are many things that make a man irritable when he arrives home from work in the evening, and a sensible wife will usually notice the storm signals and will leave him alone until he simmers down. When Mr. Wormwood arrived back from the garage that evening, his face was as dark as a thundercloud. And somebody was clearly for the high jump pretty soon. That means he's going to be mean to somebody because he's in a bad mood. His wife recognised the signals immediately, made herself scarce. Then he strode into the living room. Matilda happened to be curled up in an armchair in the corner, totally absorbed in a book. Mr. Wormwood switched on the television. The screen lit up. The programme blared. It's like a really loud noise. Mr. Wormwood glared at Matilda. She hadn't moved. She had somehow trained herself to block her ears to the ghastly sound of the dreaded box. She kept right on reading, and for some reason this infuriated the father. Perhaps his anger was intensified because he saw her getting pleasure from something that was beyond his reach. "Don't you ever stop reading?" he snapped at her. "Oh, hello, Daddy," she said pleasantly. "Did you have a good day?" "What is this trash?" he said, snatching the book from her hands. "It isn't trash, Daddy, it's lovely. It's called The Red Pony. It's by John Steinbeck, an American writer. Why don't you try it? You'll love it." "Filth," said Mr. Wormwood. "If it's by an American, it's certain to be filth. That's all they write about." "No, Daddy, it's beautiful, honestly, it is. It's about—" "I don't want to know what it's about," Mr. Wormwood barked. "I'm fed up with your reading anyway. Go and find yourself something useful to do." With frightening suddenness, he now began ripping the pages out of the book in handfuls and throwing them into the waste paper basket. Matilda froze in horror. The father kept going. There seemed little doubt that the man felt some kind of jealousy. "How dare she?" he seemed to be saying with each rip of the page. "How dare she enjoy something? Reading books when he couldn't. How dare she?" "That's a library book," Matilda cried. "It doesn't belong to me. I have to return it to Mrs. Phelps." "Then you'll have to buy her another one, won't you?" the father said, still tearing out the pages. You'll have to save your pocket money until there's enough in the kitty to buy a new one for your precious Mrs. Phelps, won't you?" And with that, he dropped the now empty covers of the book into the basket and marched out of the room, leaving the telly blaring. Most children in Matilda's place would have burst into floods of tears, but she didn't do this. She seemed to know that neither crying nor sulking ever got anyone anywhere. The only sensible thing to do is when you're attacked is, as Napoleon once said, to counterattack. Matilda's wonderfully subtle mind was already working at devising another suitable punishment for the poisonous parent. The plan that was now beginning to hatch in her mind depended, however, upon whether or not Fred's parrot really was as good a talker as Fred made out. Fred was a friend of Matilda's. He was a small boy of 6 who lived just around the corner from her, and for days he'd been going on about this great talking parrot that his father had given him. So the following afternoon, as soon as Mrs. Wormwood had departed in her car for another session of bingo, Matilda set out for Fred's house to investigate. She knocked on his door and asked if he would be kind enough to show her the famous bird. Oh, Fred was delighted and led her up to the bedroom, where a truly magnificent blue and yellow parrot sat in a tall cage. "There it is," Fred said. "I name it Chopper." "Make it talk," Matilda said. "You can't make it talk," Fred said. "You have to be patient. It talks when it feels like it." They hung around, waiting. Suddenly the parrot said, "Hello, hello, hello." It was exactly like a human voice. "That's amazing," said Matilda. "What else can it say?" "Rattle my bones," said the parrot, giving a wonderful imitation of a spooky voice. "Rattle my bones." "He's always saying that," Fred told her. "What else can he say?" Matilda asked. "That's about it," Fred said. "But it is pretty marvellous, don't you think?" "Oh, it's fabulous," Matilda said. "Will you lend him to me, just for one night?" "No," said Fred, "certainly not." "I'll give you all my next week's pocket money," Matilda said. That was different. Fred thought about it for a few seconds. "All right then," he said, "if you promise to return him tomorrow." Matilda staggered back to her own empty house, carrying the tall cage in both hands. There was a large fireplace in the dining room, and she now set about wedging the cage up the chimney and out of sight. This wasn't so easy, but she managed it in the end. "Hello, hello, hello," the bird called down to her. "Hello, hello." "Shut up, you nut," Matilda said, and she went out to wash the soot off her hands. That evening, while the mother and father and brother and Matilda were having supper as usual in the living room in front of the television, a voice came loud and clear from the dining room across the hall. "Hello, hello, hello," it said. "Hurry," said the mother, turning white. "There's someone in the house. I heard a voice." "So did I," the brother said. Matilda jumped up and switched off the telly. "Shh," she said. "Listen." They all stopped eating and sat there, very tense, listening. "Hello, hello, hello," came the voice again. "There it is," cried the brother. "It's burglars," hissed the mother. "They're in the dining room." "I think they are," the father said, sitting tight. "Go and catch them then, Harry," hissed the mother. "Go and collar them red-handed." The father didn't move. He seemed in no hurry to dash off and be a hero. His face had turned grey. "Get on with it," hissed the mother. "They're probably after the silver." The husband wiped his lips nervously with his napkin. "Why don't we all go and look together?" he said. "Come on then," said the brother. "Come on, Mum." "They're definitely in the dining room," Matilda whispered. "I'm sure they are." The mother grabbed a poker from the fireplace and the father took a golf club that was standing in the corner. The brother seized a table lamp, ripping the plug out of the corner of the brother seized a table lamp, ripping the plug out of its socket. Matilda took the knife she had been eating with, and all four of them crept towards the dining room door, the father keeping well behind the others, so he's not really leading this. "Hello, hello, hello," came the voice again. "Come on," Matilda cried, and she burst into the room, brandishing a knife. "Stick 'em up," she yelled. "We've caught you!" The others followed her, waving their weapons. Then they stopped. They stared around the room. There was no one there. "Oh, there's no one here," said the father, greatly relieved. "I heard him, Harry," the mother shrieked, still quaking. "I distinctly heard his voice. So did you." "I'm certain I heard him," Matilda cried. "He's in here somewhere," and she began searching behind the sofa and the curtains. Then the voice came once again, soft and spooky this time. "Rattle my bones," it said. "Rattle my bones." Now we know what's making that sound, but this family doesn't. They all jumped, including Matilda, who was a pretty good actress. They stared around the room. There was still no one there. "It's a ghost," Matilda said. "Heaven help us!" Mother cried, clutching her husband round the neck. "I know it's a ghost," Matilda said. "I've heard it here before." "This room is haunted. I thought you knew that." "Oh, save us!" the mother screamed, almost throttling her husband. "I'm getting out of here," the father said, greyer than ever now, and they all fled, slamming the door behind them. The next afternoon, Matilda managed to get a rather sooty and grumpy parrot down from the chimney and out of the house without being seen. She carried it through the back door and ran with it all the way to Fred's house. "Did it behave itself?" Fred asked her. "We had a lovely time with it," Matilda said. "My parents adored it." There we go. So that was a little chapter of Matilda getting her own back on her parents for being beastly. I hope you've enjoyed our little chapter, and if you want it, go and find a copy. It's such a good read. Thanks very much. Bye, Elf.